My name is Qingji, and I am a fox spirit. My sister's name is Qingjiao, and she is a proper fox spirit. What does a proper fox spirit look like? The kind that is alluring, capable of transforming into a peerless beauty to bewitch men. My sister is exactly that kind of fox. She can transform into any kind of beauty in the blink of an eye. Some are charming, some are aloof, some are innocent, and some are enchanting. It all depends on what the man is drawn to. Well, I'm a rather unconventional fox spirit. Every time my sister returns from her cultivation, she tells me about her conquests. Today she enchanted this scholar. Tomorrow she seduced that young master. She says that when men first lay eyes on her, their gazes freeze. With the second glance, their souls are lost. And by the third glance, they'd give their lives for her. The power of desire, my sister says, lazily swaying her tail. Men give it most freely. You just look at me. Think of me in your heart, and I gain the nourishment for my cultivation. How simple. I lie on a rock in the cave, tilting my head to look at her. But sister, you transform into a woman to seduce men. What if you transformed into a man to seduce women? My sister was taken aback for a moment. What? I mean, I want to become a man, I said. Can't the thoughts given by a woman be used by a man? My sister sat up, frowning. What nonsense are you talking? We are female foxes. So of course we transform into women to seduce men. This is a rule passed down from our ancestors. How could a female fox ever become a man? Rules are made by people. I rolled over, exposing my furry belly. They aren't set by heaven. My sister was too lazy to argue with me, flicked her tail, and went to sleep. But I didn't sleep. I stared at the crack in the cave ceiling, watching the moonlight seep through, feeling a restless itch in my heart. Why couldn't it be done? A few days later, while my sister was out cultivating, I secretly transformed once. First, I turned into a woman and looked at my reflection in the mountain stream, quite pretty, with eyes and brows resembling my sister's, but with a bit more, I'm not sure what. Then, I took a deep breath, closed my eyes, and imagined the appearance of a man. When I opened my eyes, the reflection in the water had changed. It was still the same face, but the features had become more defined. With a touch of heroic spirit between the brows, I was taller, my shoulders broader, and my chest flat. I was taken aback for a moment, then burst out laughing. So, becoming a man was that simple. I picked out the clothes my sister had worn when she disguised herself as a man to flirt with scholars. Her clothes were a bit tight on me. After all, I had grown taller. I walked down to the town at the foot of the mountain and found a tea stall to sit at. The tea stall owner was an elderly woman who glanced at me and said, "What tea would you like, sir?" Sir. She called me sir. I almost couldn't hold back my laughter, lowering my head to suppress it. "A pot of longjing, please." The aunt served the tea, and I imitated other men by holding the bowl boldly and drinking, though my clear, bright fox eyes subtly scanned the surroundings. At the next table sat a few scholars discussing poetry. A bit farther away, an old man selling candied hawthorns carried a straw target and called out his wares, while across the street, a cosmetic store was surrounded by a few young women. I drank half a pot of tea but couldn't quite savor any flavor, wondering why humans enjoy drinking water steeped with dried grass. As a fox, the tea tasted utterly bland, so I simply set the bowl down, placed the copper coins I'd taken from my sister's pocket on the table, and stood up to leave. No one recognized me as a fox spirit. No one thought there was anything unusual about me. I was just an ordinary young gentleman, out for a stroll. I spent the whole day wandering around the town, listening to storytelling, watching plays, and eating noodles. It wasn't until the sun set that I started heading back, walking along the mountain path. I felt as if I had come to understand something. I didn't lure anyone today, but it seems I've gained more than my sister. When that auntie glanced at me, she thought, "This young man is really handsome." Does that count as a thought? That girl walked past me and took a second look. Does that count? The old man selling candied hawthorn called out to me, and I smiled and waved him off. He muttered, "This young man has a good temper. Does that count? If all of these count, then..." I looked up at the moon and suddenly smiled. "Sister, you might be mistaken." I went back and told my sister about my discovery, but she didn't believe me. How much could there be? She scoffed, "It's sparse, not even enough to fill the gaps between your teeth. Look at me when I stand before that scholar. I can lure his soul away. The thoughts and desires are so abundant they could drown you." "But sister," I said, "you charm one at a time, but in a single day, I've gathered at least a dozen threads of devotion." My sister scoffed, "A dozen? What good is that?" "The thing is," I looked at her, "I don't need to turn into a beauty to lure anyone. I just need to be myself. Learn to be a person, walk among the crowd, and they give me their devotion." My sister fell silent. After a long while, she said, "So what? In the end, it's still not as much as I have." I didn't argue with her. I knew she wouldn't understand. She had been a fox for over 300 years and had long grown accustomed to trading her beauty for things. Beauty for money, for life, for affection. She didn't believe there was anything in this world that didn't require a trade. But I believe I can do nothing, just walk among a crowd of people, and they will look at me, think of me, remember me, although I don't know why. Among humans, simply being a man can earn so much. But those thoughts are scattered and faint, yet when added together, they far outweigh the intensity of my sister's share. Later, I went to the capital. I made up an identity for myself, a scholar from Jiangnan, surnamed Qin, with the given name Shen. I rented a small courtyard in the capital and began studying. Don't laugh. What's wrong with a fox spirit studying? I've learned to take on human form, so of course I should also learn human skills. Besides, I'm going to take the imperial exams. When my sister found out, she laughed so hard that her snow-white fur rolled on the ground. "You, taking the imperial exams? You haven't even flipped through the 4 books and 5 classics of humans." I really couldn't do anything about her. With a stern fox face, I said, "I learn fast." She said, "So what? Can you outscore those who have studied their whole lives?" I didn't answer, but I know the answer. I can, not because I'm a fox spirit, but because I want to win more than they do. They study for fame, to bring honor to their ancestors, and to secure titles and privileges for their wives and children. Why do I study? I can't quite explain it either. Perhaps it's just to prove that I can live in this world like a true human being. In the first year, I passed the provincial examination and became a Duran. In the second year, I passed the imperial examination and became a Jinsha. In the third year, I entered the Hanlin Academy. My sister came to visit me and stood at the gate of my small courtyard, stunned for quite a while. She was dressed in ordinary women's clothes, without using any magic to enhance her beauty, just her natural appearance. Yet, even so, she caught the eye of old man Lee from next door, who had come out to pour water. She walked into the courtyard, looking around. "Is this really where you live?" "Yes." I poured her some tea. "It's a bit simple, but make do with it." She held the tea bowl, looking at me. I was wearing a blue robe, my hair tied up with a hairpin, sitting on a stone bench. "No different from any other young official in this courtyard." "You've changed," she said. "I haven't changed," I said. "I'm still me." She shook her head and said nothing more. As she was leaving, she stood at the door and suddenly asked, "Have you received many thoughts?" I smiled and said, "Many." I knew she was asking if I was doing well, but we had just argued, and it was hard to save face. She nodded and left. That night, I stood in the courtyard watching the moon. The moon was the same as the one we saw on Qingqiu Mountain, but I knew that my sister and I were no longer the same. A few more years passed, and I became a close confidant of the emperor. The emperor was only a few years older than me, a man of unpredictable moods. When he was happy, he could talk with me about poetry and literature until midnight. When he was unhappy, he could throw me out of the palace over a single sentence, but I had figured out his temperament. The emperor may seem capricious, but he is actually quite easy to placate. He enjoys being flattered, hearing sweet words, and being praised, so I simply go along with him, showering him with compliments. After all, a few kind words cost me nothing, yet they bring me tangible power in return. My official rank kept rising, from the Hanlin Academy to the Ministry of Personnel, and from there to the Grand Secretariat. Eventually, I became a favorite of the emperor, and wherever I went, people would flatter and curry favor with me. That year, the emperor decided to travel to the southern regions. He specifically requested that I accompany him. Jiangnan is truly beautiful, with misty rain and small bridges over flowing streams. Although I am not truly human, I also love the scenery there. More importantly, my sister is also in Jiangnan. She has been in Suzhou, Jiangnan, all these years, cultivating in her own way. I've heard people say that in Suzhou, there is a famous courtesan, as beautiful as a fairy, for whom many young noblemen have squandered their fortunes. In Hangzhou, there is a widow who remained chaste for 3 years and was finally taken home by a wealthy merchant as his lawful wife. In Yangzhou, there is a flower-selling girl, fresh and clean, who somehow captivated the only son of a salt merchant. All of these are my sister. Her method of cultivation remains the same old routine, finding new ways to seduce men. I don't know how she's been doing, but in the occasional letters, she always says she's fine. This time, when the emperor traveled south of the Yangtze River, I had thought I could take the opportunity to visit her. Unexpectedly, the emperor saw her first. That day in Suzhou, after we finished touring the humble administrator's garden, we took a boat to Hanshan Temple. Halfway through the boat ride, there was a woman washing clothes on the shore, her hair styled in a married woman's bun. As she worked, she quietly brushed away a stray strand of hair by her temple. With just that one glance, the emperor froze. "Who is that?" he asked. The county magistrate beside him also did not recognize her, but he thought the woman was quite beautiful. When I followed the emperor's gaze, my heart sank halfway. It was my sister. She hadn't changed much in appearance, dressed in ordinary cloth clothes, squatting by the river washing laundry, but even so, she was captivating enough to make one unable to look away. "Your Majesty," I said, mustering my courage, "she should be a local village woman." "A village woman?" the emperor laughed. "How is it that I never knew the village women of Jiangnan all look like this?" He sent someone to inquire. That evening, my sister was taken to the imperial palace. I couldn't stop it. On the day my sister entered the palace, I requested an audience with the emperor. He was in high spirits and greeted me with a smile. "Qin Qing, you've come at the perfect time. I've found a wonderful person today, and I'll let you meet her later." I knelt on the ground, my forehead pressed against the cold golden bricks. "I dare to make a request." "Speak." "The young lady who entered the palace today," I paused, "is my sister." The emperor was taken aback for a moment, then burst into laughter. "Your sister, Minister Qin, isn't your family from Jiangnan? Why would she, instead of being pampered at home, go to Suzhou to wash clothes? I come from a family that has fallen into decline, and my sister was fostered with relatives. Somehow, she ended up here." I said, "I beg your Majesty to show mercy and allow me to take my sister out of the palace." The emperor looked at me, his smile slowly fading. "Qin Qing," his voice was faint, "are you trying to take someone from me?" I prostrated myself on the ground, not daring to look up. I would not dare. "It's just that my sister already had a husband before this." "But the officials, that's good to hear," he said. "Rise. I am quite fond of your sister. From now on, in the palace, I will not treat her unfairly. Besides, I am the emperor. If those old fellows below have any objections, let them submit their memorials. Let's see how many lives they have to spare for that." I stood up, my knees weak, as I walked out. I heard him say inside, "Go and investigate Qin Qing's family background." I closed my eyes. What family background of Qin Qing could there possibly be in this world? My identity is fake, and I myself am fake, if they really investigate. But strangely, no matter how much they investigated, they found nothing. Later, I found out that it was my sister who had pulled some strings in the palace. Using Fox clan magic, she planted false memories in the minds of those investigating the case. Thus, Qin Shen's background was perfectly crafted, a scholarly family from Jiangnan. Parents deceased at an early age, a younger sister placed in the care of relatives, and later, when the relatives' household fell into turmoil, the sister was left to wander among the common people, flawless. The first time I entered the palace to see her was 3 months after she had entered. She resides in a side hall of the Changal Palace and has been granted the title of noble lady. The emperor bestowed upon her the title Zhao, so she is called Noble Lady Zhao. When I arrived, she was sitting by the window, lost in thought. "Sister," she turned her head, saw it was me, and smiled. "You're here." I walked over and sat down opposite her. The palace maid served tea and then withdrew. Only the two of us remained in the room. "How have you been?" "Not bad," she said. "There are many people in this palace, and many thoughts as well, though it can't compare to you." "How do you know it can't compare to me?" She looked at me and suddenly smiled. "The aura around you has grown stronger since I last saw you. So intense, with so many thoughts directed at you. How many people must be thinking of you?" I didn't say anything. She sighed. "I didn't believe what you said before. I thought those scattered thoughts couldn't compare to the intense, fervent gazes men gave me. But after coming to the palace, I realized you were right." "Why?" "There's only one man in this palace," she said. "But there are many women. Those women look at me with hatred, jealousy, and curses. But those are still thoughts. And then there are the eunuchs and maids. They look at me with fear, flattery, and envy, all together." She paused. "More than what you said back then." I looked at her. She had changed. It's not that her appearance has changed, but her gaze has. When she used to look at people, there was always a hint of allure in her eyes, a natural skill of the Fox clan that she might not even have been aware of. But now, that hint has faded. "What about the Empress?" I asked. She was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. "How did you know?" "Just a guess." She nodded without denying it. "What kind of person is the Empress?" "I've seen her a few times. She's a gentle woman who speaks softly and treats everyone kindly. But beneath that kindness lies a quiet depth that's hard to read." The emperor treated her, not particularly well, but not particularly poorly either. Among the 3,000 beauties in the palace, she firmly held the position of empress, not because the emperor loved her deeply, but because she never made a mistake. "She carries the aura of the phoenix," my sister said. "The aura of the phoenix. The dragon's aura belongs to the emperor, while the phoenix's aura belongs to the empress. Moreover, the phoenix's aura can only be nurtured by an empress of impeccable virtue. For the Fox clan, this is even more precious than the power of faith. So I like being with her," she said. "Even if we don't talk, just being together is enough." I looked at her profile and suddenly felt a sense of unfamiliarity. Is this my sister, the one who, for 300 years, has only known how to seduce men in every possible way? "Do you like her?" I asked. She turned her head, looked at me, and smiled. "What nonsense are you talking about?" I didn't say anything more, but I knew I wasn't talking nonsense. My sister's stubbornness has remained the same for centuries. The emperor soon discovered that his newly appointed noble Lady Zhao did not pay him much attention. When he was kind to her, she remained indifferent. When he did not come, she did not long for him. This was different from the other women in the palace. Other women would practically cling to him when they saw him. But as for her, when he came, she served him. When he left, she went about her own business. At first, he found it refreshing. Later, it was no longer refreshing. "Do you have someone else?" he once asked. "Drunk," pinching her chin. She shook her head. Then why? He leaned in closer, his eyes red. Am I not good to you? The emperor treats me very well. Then why are you? I am just this kind of person, she said. If your majesty does not like it, you can simply ignore me. The emperor stared at her for a long time, then finally threw down his cup and left. After that, he rarely came. People in the palace are the best at judging others by their status. Since the emperor no longer came, those who used to flatter her gradually stopped visiting as well. The charcoal was insufficient, the food was cold, and the clothes were worn out, but no one cared. But the empress sent people to deliver things, high-quality charcoal, warm meals, and newly made clothes. Each time the messenger came, they said it was the empress who had sent them. My sister accepted the gifts and had someone go back to express her gratitude. Then she sat by the window, staring blankly at those things. Once when I went to see her, I happened to catch her in a daze. What are you thinking about? She snapped out of it and smiled. Nothing. I looked at those things and said, the empress is truly good to you. She remained silent. But, I paused, be careful. Things in the palace aren't that simple. She looked at me. You don't trust her. I trust her, I said, but I don't trust the affairs of this palace. She nodded and said nothing more. Later, I realized I had spoken too soon. At that time, I didn't know that the relationship between the emperor and the empress was no longer what it had been in the past. When the emperor was young, he genuinely loved the empress. They were a young couple who had weathered the storms of the struggle for the throne together. On the day the empress gave birth to their eldest legitimate son, the emperor waited anxiously outside the delivery room, pacing back and forth. When the child was born, he held him for a long time and said, "This is my eldest legitimate son. From now on, I will entrust this kingdom to him." But that was in the past. When did it start to change? Perhaps it began when the emperor grew increasingly suspicious, or when the empress became more and more silent. In any case, a rift formed between them. The rift grew wider and wider, until it became too vast for anyone to cross. That autumn, something happened. The empress's family, the Ning family, was accused of plotting a rebellion. I don't know if it's true or false. I only know that the emperor believed it. He flew into a rage in the court and immediately issued an edict. The entire Ning family was to be executed, and the empress was to be deposed and confined to the cold palace. None of the civil and military officials in the court dared to speak. Only one person stepped forward, my sister. That day I was outside the palace, and by the time I heard the news, it was already too late. I rushed to the palace with all my might, but by the time I arrived, everything was over. The empress, no, the deposed empress, was already dead. She died in her own palace. Before the emperor's men arrived to arrest her, she ended her own life. She used a hairpin, piercing it into her throat. My sister knelt beside her, covered in blood. It was the empress's blood. Sister, she looked up at me. Her eyes were dry, but I knew she was crying. When fox spirits cry, their tears don't fall. They just hold them inside, she said. My sister began, her voice hoarse like a broken gong. She said, "Let the emperor spare me." I crouched down and pulled her into my arms. She said, "In this lifetime, the one she's most sorry for is me." She said she's known for a long time that I'm not human, but she didn't care, she said. My sister's body trembled like a leaf in the wind. She said, if only she had met me earlier. I held her, unable to utter a single word. It was only later that I learned what had happened that day. My sister knelt before the emperor, begging him to spare the empress. She used no magic, no seductive arts, because such techniques had little effect on the emperor. All she could do was kneel, kowtow, until her forehead was bruised and blood flowed across the floor. The emperor did not even look at her. The empress arrived. She came on her own, without waiting to be escorted. She walked up to the emperor, knelt down, and said, "If your majesty wishes to execute this humble consort, I have nothing to say, but Lady Zhao is innocent. I beg your majesty to spare her." The emperor stared at her, his gaze complex. "You still have the nerve to come and beg me?" "I do not beg for my own life." The empress raised her head. "I only ask your majesty to spare the innocent." "Innocent?" The empress sneered. "Your Ning family rebelled, and you are innocent." The empress remained silent for a moment before saying, "Your majesty and I have been husband and wife since our youth, for 20 years now. If your majesty doubts me, I have nothing to say. But there is something I have kept in my heart for a long time. Speak. Your majesty's paranoia will eventually be the death of you." The emperor's expression changed. "Ning Glanshu." The queen stood up, straightened her clothes, and performed a deep bow to him. "Your majesty need not call me by my full name. I will go to my death now, without requiring your majesty to take action. I only beg that your majesty remember that Lady Zhao is innocent. If your majesty still holds even a shred of old affection, please let her live well." With that, she turned and left. My sister threw herself forward, clinging to her leg, crying and begging her not to leave, but the empress merely lowered her head, gently touched her face, and smiled. That smile, my sister said, was the most beautiful she had ever seen in her life, yet behind it lay a cold, resolute determination to die. Then the empress returned to her palace and pierced her own throat with a hairpin. The emperor, who had rushed to the scene upon receiving the news, stood before the empress's body for a long time. No one knew what he was thinking. It was only known later that he issued an edict to move noble Lady Zhao to a side hall near the cold palace, where she would be taken care of, but he never saw her again. My sister fell ill. The illness came on fiercely. With a fever that lasted for 7 days and 7 nights, the imperial physician said she might not survive, but on the morning of the 8th day, she woke up. The first thing upon waking is to summon me with magic. I entered the palace to see her. She had lost a lot of weight, her cheekbones protruding, with dark circles under her eyes, but her gaze was different from any I had seen before. "I've figured it out," she said. I sat on the edge of the bed, waiting for her to continue. "I used to think it was great to be a woman, become a beauty, stand in front of a man, and everything would come your way. But after coming to this palace, I realized it was all an illusion." She looked at me. "What a man gives you, he can take back at any moment. The emperor may favor you today, but he can turn cold tomorrow. He can lift you to the heavens, or he can trample you into the mud. So relying on men is useless," she whispered. "You have to rely on this." She raised her hand and clenched it into a fist. "Power," she said, "only what you hold in your own hands is real, whether you're a woman or a demon." I looked at her and suddenly smiled. "Sis, you've finally come to your senses." She was taken aback for a moment, then she smiled too. As she smiled, tears began to stream down her face. "But she can never come back." I took her hand, leaned close to her ear, and whispered softly, "What if Miss Lanju's life force isn't completely gone?" She looked up. "Her body," I said. "I've kept it." Her eyes widened. "I've also been nurturing her soul. She spent her whole life doing good deeds and accumulating virtue. She didn't deserve to die like that. I kept it a secret from everyone and swapped out her body. On the day the Ning family was executed, I secretly saved a few of them as well." My sister was stunned, unable to speak for a long time. Then she hugged me tightly and burst into tears. It was the first time in her life that she truly cried. What happened afterward was simple. My sister recovered from her illness and began to properly serve as his consort. When the emperor visited her, she attended to him with gentle warmth. Whatever the emperor said, she agreed. Whatever the emperor wanted, she provided. She was more beautiful, more tender, and more indispensable than ever before. But in her heart, she was thinking of something else entirely. As for me, I began secretly contacting the 5th prince. The 5th prince is the eldest legitimate son of the empress, 17 years old this year. After the empress died, he was demoted to his fiefdom, nominally to govern his territory, But in reality, it was an exile. When I went to find him, he was in his fiefdom, leading the common people in farming. I showed him the empress's belongings, holding the old garment. His eyes reddened. "Mother," he said hoarsely, "I have failed in my filial duties." I asked, "Your Highness, do you wish to return to the capital?" He looked up at me. "Do you want to take back what belongs to you?" His gaze changed. It was the look that the Queen's son should have. Over the next 3 years, we laid our plans in secret. My sister, in the palace, relayed the emperor's every move, while I, in the court, quietly won over ministers dissatisfied with the emperor. The fifth prince, in his fiefdom, secretly trained troops. 3 years later, the time was ripe. The emperor fell gravely ill, and treacherous ministers seized power. That night, the fifth prince led his troops into the capital. He claimed it was to purge the court of evil influences, but everyone knew what was really happening. The emperor had been ill for half a year, the court was in chaos, and people were panicking. When the fifth prince arrived, most of the court officials opened the city gates. I stood on the city tower, watching him ride in on his horse. He looked up, saw me, and nodded. At that moment, I knew I had bet correctly. When the emperor saw the fifth prince, he was already gravely ill. He lay on the dragon bed, emaciated to little more than skin and bones. "You've come," he said. The fifth prince knelt before the bed. "Your son has come too late." The emperor smiled, a smile that seemed to contain everything, yet nothing at all. "Your mother," he paused. "When your mother left, did she leave any message for you?" The fifth prince remained silent for a moment before replying. "Before the empress took her own life, she sent a message to me, asking your majesty to take care of yourself." The emperor closed his eyes. After a long while, he said, "In this lifetime, I have lived up to the nation and our ancestors, but I have failed your mother. In the future, do not follow in my footsteps." "All right, summon Minister Qin. I will pass the throne to you as planned. Having lived this long, it is time for me to depart." That night, the emperor spoke with the left chancellor for 2 hours before passing away. According to the imperial edict, the throne was entrusted to the fifth prince. The fifth prince ascended the throne and changed the era name to Hongjing. The first act of the new emperor was to posthumously honor his mother as Empress Xiaozi. The second matter was the appointment of Qin Shen as the left chancellor. The entire court was in an uproar. Who was Qin Shen? Merely a minister from a humble background. What right did he have to become the left chancellor? The new emperor spoke a single sentence in the court. "My life was once saved by Chancellor Qin. The funeral arrangements for my late mother were handled by Chancellor Qin. I am able to sit on this throne because Chancellor Qin supported me. If any of you disagree, step forward and say so." No one dared to step forward. I muttered to myself, when did I ever save this little emperor's life? But looking at these court officials, even with this explanation, I knew they were not convinced in their hearts. "It's okay, take it slow." The first thing I did after taking office as the left minister was to request the opening of women's schools. The court officials were in an uproar again. A woman without talent is virtuous. What kind of propriety is it for women to study? When the hen crows at dawn, the family is doomed. I stood in the court, waiting for them to finish arguing, and then said, "My lords, have the daughters, sisters, and mothers in your households ever studied?" Someone said, "How can that be the same, in the inner chambers? Knowing a few characters is enough." I said, "What is the difference between knowing a few characters in the inner chambers and studying in a school? It's just a change of location to continue reading." The ministers below debated, "This is truly inappropriate. Women should be confined within the inner chambers. How can they show their faces in public?" I said, "The Empress Dowager was a model for women during her lifetime. Capable of leading troops into battle, she was well versed in the 4 books and 5 classics, which enabled her to nurture an outstanding son like your majesty. Establishing a women's school is truly for the sake of cultivating future generations. Among all of you present in this court, can half of you compare to the Empress Dowager?" They were left speechless. I said, "When Your Majesty ascended the throne, it was based on the principle that the capable should lead. Moreover, if men can do something, why can't women? If you, esteemed officials, have the ability, you naturally have nothing to fear from women competing with you for positions. But if you lack the ability," I smiled and said, "then don't blame others for taking your place." The new emperor listened from above, remaining silent throughout. In the end, he said, "Granted." The ministers were indignant, but in the end, they did not speak. The women's school opened. At the entrance of the school, I personally wrote 4 characters: "The capable shall take their place." Later, more and more women began to pursue education. Some passed the imperial examinations. Some became officials, some engaged in business, and some practiced medicine. Gradually, the voices of women could be heard in the imperial court. My sister is outside the palace, accompanying the empress. Yes, the empress is not dead. I swapped her body out and used the Fox clan's secret method to nurture her soul. 3 years later, she woke up, but she lost some memories. She doesn't remember who she is or the events that happened in the palace. My sister settled her in Jiangnan. In a small courtyard with flowers and trees, mountains and waters, they lived together for many years. For a demon, a human lifespan is still too short, and time passes quickly. Before the 5th prince passed away, I once went to the palace to see him. He lay on the bed, having instructed the crown prince to keep an eye on me, and suddenly smiled. "Qin Qing." "No," he said, "what should I call you?" I was taken aback. "You're not actually human, are you?" he said. "I should have known earlier. Over the years, your intelligence has been extraordinary, and you even appeared out of nowhere when I was in danger." I didn't say anything. I knew you were no ordinary person. But no matter how much I investigated, I couldn't find anything. Later, I realized it didn't matter. "You've been helping me since I was just a prince. I trust you, and that's enough." He paused. "In this lifetime, I have loved someone, to be precise, not a human." "Right, Qin Qing." I looked at him, sighed, and slowly closed my eyes. "Your Majesty, once the arrow is released, it never returns. Choose your words carefully." "But she does not love me." "I know, I have always known. Her heart holds great love for the millions of people. But there is no place for me." He closed his eyes. "I cannot give her what she truly desires either. Sitting in this position comes with too many constraints, and besides, humans and demons are fundamentally different. I, as a person, truly do not deserve to be loved. The remaining kingdom must still be entrusted to you to help the crown prince protect it. If only I could be an ordinary person in the next life, I would undoubtedly fall in love with you without hesitation." "Qin Shen, enough, I just want to say." He opened his eyes and looked at me. "If there is a next life, I want to be reborn into an ordinary family, to be an ordinary person. The moment I see you, I will want to marry you and bring you home." Without hesitation, without carefully hiding my feelings, he smiled and said, "That would be wonderful." I looked at him, feeling a bit empty in my heart. "It's a pity, Your Majesty, your life is coming to an end, but it will come true in the next life." "Yes, it will come true," I said. He smiled with relief, nodded, and slowly closed his eyes. That night, the emperor passed away. I stood by his bed, looking at his peaceful face, and remembered his words from earlier. Suddenly, a crystal-clear teardrop fell onto my hand. So, even a fox can feel sorrow for the humble love of an emperor. In this lifetime, he gave me so much: power, trust, freedom. The only time he let me go, I still remember the words he said. "Qin Qing, I cannot give you everything you desire, but within my means, I will do my best to help you a little more." I wiped away my tears and whispered, "In the next life, may you be born into an ordinary family, Marry the girl you love and grow old together. After the new emperor ascended the throne, the reign title was changed to Jingzhou. He was a good emperor, like his predecessor, gentle and generous, yet not weak. The court was clear and just, and the people lived in peace and contentment. More and more schools for women were opening, and it became increasingly common for women to serve as officials in the marketplace. There were female merchants in the court, there were female officials, even among ordinary households, there were women who established their own independent households. I served as the left chancellor for a long time, and after the fifth prince passed away, I followed closely behind. The new emperor gave me a grand funeral, posthumously honored me as grand tutor, and bestowed upon me the posthumous title of Wanzhong. All the civil and military officials of the court came to pay their respects, and it is said that many wept until they collapsed, but my new colleagues told me that the new emperor had placed a plate of raw onions in front of every seat at every table, saying that it was good to eat onions in this season. Several officials who were at odds with me snickered quietly, but under the emperor's intimidating glare from the side, they tearfully picked up a few bites with their chopsticks. I sneered. Those old fools were still the same. If I were to die, they'd probably laugh so hard their mouths would split open. Shaking my head, I reminded myself that official matters were more important, and I promptly entered the palace to request an audience with the emperor. When the emperor saw me, he was taken aback for a moment, then smiled. "You're here." I'm here, Your Majesty. To fulfill my promise to the late emperor, I changed into women's clothing and returned to my original appearance. However, the emperor recognized me at a glance. After all, I had raised the emperor since he was a child, and I could even be considered the emperor's former tutor. "I knew you weren't dead," he said. "Take a seat." To prevent those old-timers who opposed you from laughing at your funeral, I even arranged 2 pots of onions for them. Let's see if they can hold back their tears. Upon hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh. All those rumors about the emperor being more lenient and benevolent than his predecessor were false. This crown prince had been taught by me to become a cunning yet seemingly innocent figure. I sat down and talked with him for a long time. We talked about the affairs of the court over the years, about the common people in the world, and about him asking me what I planned to do in the future. I said that once I entered the court, I wanted to establish a government office to secretly manage those monsters that had accidentally become spirits, because without rules, there can be no order. He was stunned for a moment, then said, "Approved." I said, "Your Majesty is not afraid." He said, "What is there to fear? I'm not even afraid of you. So why would I fear other demons?" I laughed. That day when I left, he escorted me to the palace gate. At our parting, he said, "Qin Qing." No, I should call you Miss Qingji. In this lifetime, having met you and having you as my teacher is my good fortune. I said, "I feel the same way, Your Majesty." He smiled, waved his hand, and turned back to go inside. I watched his retreating figure, remembering what his father had said back then. Humans and demons may follow different paths, but different paths can still lead to the same destination, as long as we find that road. Later, I established the Demon Management Bureau. It was specifically for managing those demons who had gained sentience. We taught them the rules, arranged places for them to go, and helped them coexist peacefully with humans. It was difficult at first, but it gradually got better, and my sister, in Jiangnan, accompanied the empress for a lifetime. On the day the queen left, my sister held her hand. The queen had already recalled some things, vague but enough for her to understand that the person before her was the most important one in her life. "If I had met you in my youth," she didn't finish her sentence before closing her eyes. My sister held her and didn't cry, but later, she told me that on that night, she sat in the courtyard all night, watching the moon throughout the night. After the empress left, my sister went traveling far and wide. She said that she had figured out this life and wanted to live differently in the next. I said, Then let's be sisters again in the next life. She smiled and agreed. During the Jingzhou era, the country grew increasingly prosperous. Men farmed and women wove, each finding their place. In the officialdom, there were not only men but also women. In the schools, there were not only male students but also female students. In the business world, there were male merchants as well as female merchants. Those 4 words have always hung at the entrance of the school. The capable shall take their place. I sometimes stand at that doorway, watching the students coming and going. There are men, there are women, there are good-looking ones, there are not so good-looking ones, there are smart ones, there are not so smart ones, but they are all moving forward. I remember many years ago, in the cave on Qingqiu Mountain, the words I said to my sister, "Why can't it be done? Yes, why can't it be done?" That night, I transformed back into my former self, the young nobleman in a blue robe, standing under the moonlight. The mountain breeze blew over, carrying the scent of grass and trees. I closed my eyes and listened for a while. Then I smiled and turned to leave. There was still a long road ahead. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I married my childhood sweetheart Han Nanyuan at the age of 16. At 17, I gave birth to a son for him. At 18, he was stationed at the border to build his career and achieve glory. I guarded his seriously ill parents, the child in swaddling clothes, and the lychee orchard in Lingnan, the only source of livelihood for the family. For a full 15 years, every year, the first basket of the sweetest lychees is rushed 800 miles to the northern frontier. But this year, the old servant who delivered the lychees returned in tears, saying he saw a young boy outside the general's mansion, whose eyes and brows looked just like the general's, pestering the gatekeeper for lychees to eat. I stood under the lychee tree we planted together, remembering all the times he said, "Military duties are pressing. It's not suitable to go south, just wait a little longer." It turns out lychees really can't be kept for long. Over time, even feelings can change. I traveled north alone and spent the entire day sitting in a tea house outside the general's mansion. I watched the woman take the child out and saw him return on horseback, lifting the child onto his shoulders. My son urged me to go back and be a proper general's wife. I knocked on the mansion gate instead. Han Nanyuan froze in place when he saw me. "Who is this?" the woman standing behind him asked. I smiled and placed the entire stack of letters from over a decade on the stone steps. The topmost ones were sent this spring, and he said, "When the world is at peace, I will not let you down." He excitedly grabbed my hand and said, "Listen to me, let me explain." "No need." I withdrew my hand and said, "I came only to tell you that next year's lychees will not be sent again. I will no longer guard that lychee orchard, just as I will no longer wait for this marriage that feels like widowhood." I stood in the tea house outside the general's mansion, watching the family of 3. I downed the already cooled tea in one gulp. The once sweet and fragrant fruit tea now tasted only of bitterness. Just like my 15 years of solitude. "Mother, let's go back." At some point, my 16-year-old son Han Ling stood behind me. "How did you get here?" I frowned at his evasive expression, my heart gradually turning cold. Yes, in previous years, he said he missed his father, so I always had him bring people over whenever I sent lychees. Only this year did I have the loyal old servant who is devoted to me come in his place. That is how I learned the true situation here. And how could the son I raised with my own hands not know everything here, yet choose to hide it from me? In this regard, he truly takes after his father. Seeing my gloomy expression, he instinctively took 2 steps back. "Father, he will always give us an explanation." Han Ling's voice grew softer and softer. "By acting this way, you're making things difficult for him." I snorted coldly, no longer looking at him, and stood up to walk toward the general's mansion. Han Ling couldn't stop me and had no choice but to go with me. I knocked hard on the door latch. The door was opened by a maid, who froze for a moment when she saw me. May I ask who you are? Lingnan Lin Wanting. Here to see General Han. I directly reported my name. Soon, Han Nanyuan hurried over with a woman. The moment he saw me, he froze in place. This is, the woman stepped forward, naturally supporting Han Nanyuan's arm, her gaze falling on me with confusion and wariness, under the moonlight. I recognized who she was, Su Ruoyon, the only daughter of the former Northern Garrison General. I smiled faintly and took out the neatly stacked letters from my sleeve. 15 years of letters, 173 in total. I gently placed the stack of letters on the stone steps in front of the door. On top was the one newly sent this spring. He wrote in the letter, "The northern border conflict has eased somewhat, but military affairs remain demanding, making it unsuitable for me to travel south. Once the world is at peace and the frontiers are tranquil, I will surely not let you down." Then she replied to Su Ruoyon, "I am General Han's lawfully wedded wife, Lin Wantang." Wantang. Han Nanyuan finally found his voice. He took a step forward, wanting to take my hand. I took half a step back, avoiding it. His fingers froze in midair. "Listen to my explanation." His voice grew urgent. "It's not what you think. She's just what?" I looked up at him, my gaze calm. "Just a comfort for your loneliness in the northern frontier. Just a tool to bear your children, or just a secret mistress you, General Han, keep hidden away in your mansion. WN Tang, don't speak so harshly." His face turned pale. "Oh, since it's none of those," I said with a sudden look of realization, "is that the condition for you to become the general of the northern garrison?" "General," Su Ruoyon tugged at his sleeve, tears already welling in her eyes. "How could she say such things about me? After all, I have served by your side for 15 years and even bore you a son. Even without a formal title, we have shared the bond of husband and wife." Han Nanyuan's face had long since turned ashen, because what he despised most was people saying he had risen through connections. "Enough, Lin Wantang, I know you're angry, but the matter has come to this, and you must accept it. She, like you, is also my wife." Han Ling also pulled me aside and advised, "Mother, father is now the northern frontier general. What's the harm in having 3 wives and 4 concubines? Why must you be so petty?" I raised my hand and slapped him across the face. "Foolish, without a name or status. It's clearly the act of a servant climbing into bed. There is no law in Nanjiao that recognizes such a relationship as a marriage." The next second, there was a sharp slap sound. Han Nanyuan didn't hesitate and slapped me across the face. "You are not allowed to insult Ruoyon." He was very strong, and with that slap, he sent me tumbling onto the stone steps. My forehead hit it hard, and instantly a warm stream of blood trickled down my cheek. He panicked and bent down to help me up. Just then, a servant hurried over. Anxiously, they said, "General, Madam, it's terrible. The young master suddenly has a fever and is crying to see you." Su Ruoyon's tears fell instantly as she panicked and pulled Han Nanyuan, trying to run back. Han Ling immediately stepped forward to support me, urgently calling out to him, "Father, mother is badly injured. Are you just going to leave her?" Han Nanyuan paused in his steps, about to speak, when Su Ruoyon weakly collapsed into his arms. "General, I'm so scared. If anything happens to Yanga, I won't be able to go on living either." At this moment, both Han Ling and Su Ruoyon were looking at him with expectant eyes, as if they had to make him choose. I withdrew my arm from Han Ling's grasp and said calmly, "No need, Han Nanyuan. I just came to tell you that the lychees won't be sent next year. You can go." A flicker of complexity flashed in Han Nanyuan's eyes, but in the end, he chose to turn and leave. The next second, everything went dark before my eyes, and I fainted. When I woke up, it was already late at night. "Mother." Han Ling's voice came from beside the bed. "This is the side room of the general's mansion. How are you feeling?" I raised my hand and touched my forehead. Only a thin layer of cloth was wrapped around it, and blood was still seeping out. "Where is the doctor?" I asked. Han Ling's lips trembled. "The doctors have all been called to Yanga's place," the steward said. "Father ordered that as soon as Yanga's condition stabilizes, they will come to treat you immediately." "Do you believe it?" I asked. He didn't answer, just stared at the courtyard outside the door, murmuring to himself, "I really wonder what it feels like to be a child cherished so deeply by their father." A wave of bitterness welled up in my heart. Since childhood, he had been taunted by his peers as a fatherless child. At the age of 10, he contracted the plague, suffering from high fever and falling into a coma. All night long, he kept calling out for Daddy. I held him and repeatedly said, "Daddy will be back soon." Before he would finally swallow the bitter medicine, he longed for his father's love. So how could he possibly resent Han Nanyuan? But I am different. I waited for 15 years. What I got in return was betrayal. A turn away when I was bleeding and battered. I've had enough of waiting. I leaned on the edge of the bed, struggling to stand up, and slowly made my way outside. "Mother, where are you going?" Han Ling panicked. "The medicine hall," I said. "Then back to the inn." "You, stay here." Han Ling's hand, clutching my sleeve, trembled. I turned my back to him and slowly began to speak. "Tomorrow afternoon, I will set off back to Lingnan. Either you come with me and from then on have no father, or you stay behind and have no mother. It's your choice." After saying this, I walked into the night without looking back. After struggling to knock on the door of a pharmacy and getting a simple bandage, I returned to the inn and fell straight asleep. The next morning, just as I woke up, there was a knock on the door. The visitor was Han Nanyuan. He was carrying supplements in his hand, and when he saw the bandage on my head, a flicker of guilt flashed in his eyes. "Your injury, is it any better? Last night, Yanga was critically ill, and Ruoyon fainted from fright, so I—" "General Han, there's no need to explain," I interrupted him. "Just tell me what happened." He looked at my indifferent face, a flicker of annoyance appearing in his eyes, which he quickly suppressed. "WN Tang, I know you're angry, but there are some things I must make clear to you." He took a deep breath and began to tell his story. He spoke of how, when he first arrived in the northern frontier, he fought desperately under General Su's command. He spoke of how, every time he was injured, it was Su Ruoyon who took care of him with great care. He spoke of General Su's kindness in promoting him and of Su Ruoyon's life-saving grace. Over the years, she has endured a lot of hardship with me, without any complaints or regrets. I cannot let her down. He spoke with deep emotion. Yet, I found it utterly laughable. I merely responded with a faint hum. My attitude finally made him unable to hold back his irritation. "WN Tang, do you understand? With Ruo Yang, it was a matter of circumstance, a matter of duty. But in my heart, I have always been thinking of you, thinking of Lingnan, thinking of our home, thinking of me." I laughed. 3 years ago, when the lychee orchard was poisoned by thieves, most of the fruit trees withered, and I couldn't deliver the tribute. I was arrested and thrown into prison. When I wrote to you asking for help, where were you? 5 years ago, when Linga was infected with the plague and his life hung by a thread, crying for his father at night. Where were you when I wrote to you begging you to come back and see him one last time? Last year, when my in-laws passed away one after another, and I handled the funeral arrangements alone, where were you when I wrote to inform you of their deaths? I stared into his eyes, word by word. Of all the letters you sent back, 8 out of 10 were asking for money. You said the border was harsh and provisions were insufficient, and I believed you. I scrimped and saved, sold my jewelry, even mortgaged the family land, sending you every bit of silver I could gather. But what about you? You, in the northern frontier, lived in a general's mansion, kept a mistress, fathered a son, enjoying a happy family life. Han Nanyuan, tell me, is this what you call missing me? His eyes first showed shock, then turned to confusion, and finally to anger. What nonsense are you talking? When did I ever ask you for money? And when did I ever receive the letters you mentioned? At that moment, the door was suddenly pushed open. Su Ruoyeon rushed in crying and knelt down with a thud in front of me. Sister, it's all my fault. I was the one who foolishly fell in love with the general. I was the one who didn't know shame. Everything is my fault. If you want to hit or scold someone, do it to me. She grabbed the hem of my clothes, looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. But I beg you, don't deceive the general into returning with such lies. In your letter, you clearly stated that your parents-in-law are in good health, Linger is well, and everything at home is fine. Now you speak such falsehoods. Isn't that meant to break the general's heart? She turned and clung to Han Nanyuan's leg. General, I can leave. I can disappear forever. I only beg you, let me go after Yanga recovers from his illness. All right, she cried until she nearly fainted. Han Nanyuan quickly crouched down, holding her in his arms with a heart full of pain. When I looked up again, my eyes were filled with disappointment and anger. Lin wanting. He raised his hand and slapped me again. After all these years apart, I never knew you had become such a liar, using my parents' life and death and my child's safety to deceive me. Are you even human? He helped Su Ruoyeon to her feet. His gaze swept over me, devoid of any warmth. In a few days, I will return to Lingnan to hold a grand wedding and marry her. You should go back first and prepare everything, fulfilling your duties as the mistress of the general's mansion. This is an order. With that, he turned to leave. I quickly called him back, took 3 documents from my sleeve, and spread them out on the table. Press your fingerprint here. This year's lychee trees are damaged, so I plan to sell them. He didn't even look at it and directly pressed his fingerprint. Fine. Selling it will give us some silver to buy more betrothal gifts for Ruoyeon. After saying that, he turned and walked away, holding Su Ruoyeon in his arms. He didn't spare me another glance. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. I stared at the 3 documents, each bearing a bright red handprint. The first one, the deed transfer for the general's mansion. The second one, the deed transfer for the lychee orchard. Chapter 3, Divorce Agreement. My heart was completely closed off. I waited at the inn until the afternoon. Han Ling did not come, as expected, yet my heart still ached. I packed my luggage and directly boarded the carriage back to Lingnan. Passing by the general's mansion, I saw Han Ling through the gate, crouching under a tree in the corner, watching the family of 3 playing happily in the courtyard. Full of desolation, I did not linger. This was his own choice. After returning to Lingnan, I quickly sold off the property and lychee orchard, converting all my assets into silver notes worth 10,000 taels of gold. Then I hired a carriage to return to my hometown in Jiangnan. Just as I was about to step into the carriage, Han Ling's voice suddenly came from behind. Mother, where are you going? Do you really not want your son anymore? His eyes were filled with panic, like an abandoned child. I looked at him. In the end, my heart softened. Linger, I whispered. This place is no longer my home. I am returning to my own home. If you are willing, come with me. From now on, you will have only me as your mother, and no father. He shook his head tearfully. Mother, father and the others have also returned. They're right behind us. They'll be here soon. I didn't say anything more, immediately withdrew my gaze. Got into the carriage, and left directly. The carriage arrived at the city gate, where the guards conducted a routine inspection. Suddenly, the voices of Han Nanyuan and Su Ruoyeon came from outside the carriage. General, will my sister drive me away? Han Nanyuan's voice was very firm. She won't. She is the daughter of a merchant. It is already an honor for her to become a general's wife. Moreover, the reason she has waited for me for 15 years is that she truly cannot do without me. After returning to the estate, I will make it up to her properly, and she will no longer take her anger out on you. I lifted a corner of the carriage curtain, seeing him riding a tall horse. Su Ruoyeon sat in front of him, nestled in his embrace. He said calmly to the coachman, Let's go." The carriage passed by them. I lowered the curtain and didn't look back again. That's it then. From 16 to 33, it's all been like a dream. Let's just go our separate ways. By the time Han Nanyuan stepped into the Lingnan military headquarters, it was already dusk. The last rays of the setting sun spilled into the empty courtyard, casting a glaring desolation. He stood at the door, stunned. What's going on, Linger?" He saw Han Ling sitting on the stone steps of the main hall, head bowed, shoulders trembling slightly. Han Ling raised his head. His face was covered in tear stains, his eyes swollen and red like peach pits. "Father," his voice was terribly hoarse. "Mother is gone. This place is no longer our home." Han Nanyuan's pupils suddenly contracted. "Gone? Where did she go?" "Jiangnan," Han Ling murmured. "She said she wanted to return to her own home." "Nonsense," Han Nanyuan roared, the veins on his temples bulging. "Who allowed her to leave? Who allowed her to sell the house? I am the master of this household." He grabbed Han Ling's shoulder with such force that it felt as if he might crush the bone. "Why didn't you stop her? Why did you let her go?" Han Ling, dizzy from being shaken, gritted his teeth and said word by word, "If mother wanted to leave, how could I have stopped her?" Han Nanyuan raised his hand and slapped him across the face. He slowly turned his head back, looking at Han Nanyuan. The last glimmer of light in his eyes extinguished. "Worthless." Han Nanyuan's voice was as cold as ice. "Can't even stop a woman. What use are you to me?" Han Ling laughed. He laughed bitterly, laughed in despair. "Yes. I am useless. I shouldn't have abandoned my mother for you." At that moment, footsteps came from the side door. The old servant, Uncle Shen, walked out slowly, carrying a bundle on his back. He glanced at Han Nanyuan, his eyes not filled with reverence, but only sorrow. He bent down, took a letter from his bosom, and presented it with both hands. "This is what the mistress asked this old servant to deliver to you." Han Nanyuan accepted it. It was the divorce agreement he had personally stamped with his fingerprint. The old servant continued, "The mistress has dismissed all the servants, and I will soon be returning to my hometown, General Han. All these years, the mistress has truly had a difficult time. For 5 years, when the master and mistress were bedridden with serious illnesses, she never left their side and personally took care of them. In the 15 years you were away, she and the young master were bullied and could only endure it, not daring to fight back, all because there was no man in the household." Sigh. "But it's useless to say these things now." Han Nanyuan's hand, holding the divorce agreement, began to tremble. "Uncle Shen, where are my parents? Where are they?" Shenbo looked up at him, his eyes filled with shock. "General, you didn't know, the master and the mistress passed away from illness a few years ago." Boom. These words struck him like a thunderbolt. Han Nanyuan staggered a step, steadying himself by holding onto the doorframe. "What? When was it?" 3 years ago. The master and the mistress passed away one after the other." Uncle Shen's voice was very low, choked with sobs. "Before they left, lying in bed, they refused to close their eyes. They said they wanted to see their son one last time. The lady had someone send over a dozen letters to the northern frontier at full speed, but we never received your reply. They left with their eyes wide open. They died with their eyes unclosed." After finishing his words, Shenbo took a deep look at Han Nanyuan. "General, this old servant should also take his leave." He shouldered his bundle and slowly walked out of the main gate, his hunched figure disappearing into the twilight. In the courtyard, a deathly silence fell. Han Nanyuan stood there, like a stone statue, the divorce letter in hand fluttered to the ground. "No, impossible," he muttered to himself. "If Yang said, in Wantong's letter, it says everything at home is fine, father and mother are in good health, and Linger is well." Hearing his words, a flicker of panic instantly flashed in Su Ruoyon's eyes. Directly and stealthily pinched Han Yang. Han Yang immediately burst into loud sobs. "General, Yang isn't feeling well. let's not think about these things for now. How about we find a place to stay first? She held the child in her arms. Crying with tears streaming down like pear blossoms in the rain, Han Nanyuan looked at her tears, at the child's pale little face. All doubts in my heart were cast aside, waving a weary hand. Let's go, to the inn. Inside the inn, Han Nanyuan sat by the window, looking at the divorce agreement in his hand. In his mind, Mr. Shen's words echoed incessantly. His heart felt as if it were being squeezed by a large hand, tightening more and more. The pain was so intense he could hardly breathe. If what Uncle Shen said is true, he owed Lin Wantang, owed his parents, far too much. Bang! Suddenly, the sound of a fight came from downstairs, mixed with curses, cries, and the loud crash of overturned tables and chairs. Han Nanyuan suddenly snapped back to reality and rushed downstairs. The lobby was in complete disarray. Han Ling was on top of a young man in fine clothes, throwing punch after punch. His own face was covered in injuries, with blood at the corner of his mouth and dark bruises around his eyes. Stop! Han Nanyuan rushed over and grabbed Han Ling. What are you doing? At such a young age, you already know how to stir up trouble. He raised his hand and slapped him again. It's your mother who spoiled you. That's why you have no manners. Han Ling raised his head and looked at him. His eyes were bloodshot, filled with hatred. Did my mother teach you that? He laughed, a bitter, piercing laugh. My mother taught me to be kind to others, to be tolerant and generous, and to be patient. But now she's gone, and I don't want to swallow my anger anymore. Then he turned to the young masters who had been bullying him and shouted, Look, I have a father. He is my father. The young master on the ground got up, wiped the blood from his nose, and sneered, Han Ling. What are you pretending for? Your father, him. He pointed at Han Nanyuan, his face full of disdain. Stop lying. When you were dying from the plague, I didn't see any father come to visit you. When we had you pinned to the ground and were beating you, I didn't see any father standing up for you. Now a father shows up. Who are you trying to fool? The few followers behind him also joined in the laughter. Exactly. A bastard is a bastard. And now you're making up a father. Shut up. I am his biological father. Han Nanyuan let out a fierce roar. He turned around, glaring at those young masters. His eyes were filled with a chilling killing intent. The young men were so frightened that they trembled and took several steps back. What do you want to do? My father is the county magistrate. County magistrate? Han Nanyuan sneered. Go back and tell your father that General Han Nanyuan of the Northern Garrison has returned. And I will kill the son of a county magistrate just the same. The young master's face instantly turned deathly pale, and he immediately fled in a panic. Han Nanyuan paid them no further attention. Turning around, he looked at Han Ling, wanting to say something, but he saw Han Ling looking back at him. There was no gratitude, no joy in his eyes, only a deathly silence. Now you remember you're my father, Han Ling said softly. Now you think of standing up for me. What's the use? Mother is already gone. This family has already fallen apart. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled. That smile was uglier than crying. I was so foolish, truly. For the sake of that pitiful bit of fatherly love, for a single glance or word of concern from you, I abandoned my mother. I abandoned the one who sheltered me from wind and rain for 16 years. I deserve it. He turned around and walked out. Linger. Han Nanyuan tried to hold him back. Han Ling shook off his hand, turning back. I took one last look at him. Han Nanyuan, I hate you. From now on, I will never call you father again. You're not worthy. After saying that, he rushed out of the inn.
Given me. I shook my head and turned to walk back. Go back. Your father is a general. You can pursue a career in government, become an official, and have a bright future. Staying by my side will only hold you back. No, I won't leave. Han Ling got up and followed inside. Mother, I don't want a future. I don't want an official career. I only want you. I was wrong. I was truly wrong. Enough. I cut him off. Let's not bring up the past anymore. If you want to stay, then stay. But I don't keep idle people here. Starting tomorrow, work with the other hands. Han Ling was stunned. He looked at my indifferent face, and the hope in his eyes gradually faded away. But he still nodded. I will work hard. Han Ling stayed. But he soon discovered that I treated him differently from the other children. I would smile at the 4 adopted children, be gentle with them, buy them candy, and tuck them into bed. Towards him, there was only coldness. Assign him tasks, check his homework, correct his mistakes. No extra words, no extra glances. He felt wronged, he was confused, but he dared not ask. Just work harder and be more careful to please. The oldest child I adopted is called a Ching, 12 years old, very sensible. In private, he quietly asked Han Ling, "Brother Han, why is Auntie so harsh on you?" Han Ling smiled bitterly, "Because I did something wrong. Then you must correct it properly. Auntie is soft-hearted and will forgive you. Look at us. We used to steal, fight, and deceive people. Auntie brought us back and taught us how to be good people. Now that we've changed, Auntie treats us really well." Han Ling looked into a Ching's innocent eyes, feeling a pang of bitterness in his heart. "You know how to be grateful. I don't deserve it." Arching patted his shoulder. "Then learn to be grateful." Auntie said, "Everyone's heart is made of flesh. If you treat her well, she will always feel it." Han Ling nodded heavily. From then on, he worked even harder. Not only did he work, but he also learned to take care of his younger siblings, manage the embroidery shop, and negotiate business deals. He was smart and learned quickly. This finally took after me. Another 2 months passed. In early summer, the lotus flowers began to bloom. I was busy calling the children to buy ingredients to make a cooling soup. However, an unexpected visitor arrived at the embroidery shop. It's Han Nanyuan. He stood at the door, dressed in simple cloth clothes. Covered in dust and travel weariness, his face was stubbled, his eyes bloodshot, looking downcast and haggard. Upon seeing me, tears instantly welled up in his eyes. "Wantang." I set down the account book in my hands and looked up at him. "General Han, is something the matter?" Han Nanyuan's lips trembled. I have resigned from my official post, and I have sent Su Ruoyon and her child away. I will never see them again in this lifetime. I came to find you. I want to start over with you." "Start over?" I laughed. "General Han, you jest. I never go back on my word." "No, Wanting, listen to me." He stepped forward urgently. "I know I was wrong. I know I let you down. I know I deserve to die. But give me a chance. Okay, I've resigned from my post. I'm no longer a general. I'll stay by your side. Treat you well for the rest of my life. And make it up to you. Make it up to me." I smiled and threw a tea bowl to the ground, shattering it into countless pieces. "Han Nanyuan, can you repair this tea bowl, so that it looks exactly the same as before, without any trace of damage?" "You can't, just like between us. Even if we force ourselves to patch things up, the cracks will always remain." I stood up and walked out. "General Han, please return." WN Tang, he wanted to pull me. Just then, someone walked in from outside the door. The owner of the largest restaurant in the city, Lu Jingming, in his early 30s, elegant and handsome, dressed in a blue robe. With a graceful demeanor, he walked in with a food box in hand, smiling. "Madam Lin, I heard you haven't had much appetite lately. I had the chef prepare some bird's nest porridge and brought it for you to try." He saw Han Nanyuan and was momentarily stunned. "This is unrelated person." I took the food box and smiled slightly. "Boss Lu, you've gone to a lot of trouble." "You're welcome," Lu Jingming said gently. "I've already contacted the supplier for the Suzhou embroidery you mentioned last time, and the price has been settled 20% lower than the market rate." "Really? That's great." My eyes lit up with joy. "Boss Lu is truly impressive." "Not at all, it's Miss Lin who has a good eye." We talked about business, embroidery patterns, and interesting stories from Jiangnan. Laughter continued, and the atmosphere was harmonious. Han Nanyuan stood to the side. Like an outsider, he watched the smile on my face. The rapport between me and Lu Jingming as we spoke, he saw the undisguised admiration and affection in Lu Jingming's eyes. My heart aches as if cut by a knife. So, without his constraints, I have been living so well. Watching the gradually receding figures of me and Lu Jingming, he could only turn away in loneliness. He rented a small courtyard near the embroidery shop to live in. Every day, he would come to the embroidery shop and watch me from afar. When I ignored him, he would seek out Han Ling. Hoping she could help him plead his case, Han Ling only gave him one response: "You don't deserve to be my father, my mother won't forgive you, and neither will I." Han Nanyuan smiled bitterly. "Linger, your father knows he was wrong, what good does knowing do?" Han Ling looked at him coldly. Too late. Day by day passed. The silver money that Han Nanyuan had brought was gradually used up. He resigned from his official position and lost his salary. Now, he was penniless. He has carried goods at the docks, washed dishes in taverns, and sold calligraphy and paintings on the streets. Yet the money he earned was barely enough to make ends meet. He could hardly afford the rent for the small courtyard he lived in. He was as down and out as a stray dog. Yet he still came to the embroidery shop every day, watching me from afar, as if performing some kind of ritual. Another half-month passed, and on that day, a heavy rain was pouring down. Han Nanyuan remained steadfast, standing under the eaves across from the embroidery workshop, watching me. But suddenly, a group of government soldiers arrived, and the one leading them was none other than Su Ruoyon. She saw Han Nanyuan, a flash of hatred in her eyes. "Han Nanyuan, did you think hiding here would keep me from finding you?" Han Nanyuan stood up, frowning. "What are you here for?" Su Ruoyon sneered. "I'll tell you. I've already reported your bribery for official positions to the court. These soldiers are here to arrest you." Han Nanyuan's face instantly turned pale. Su Ruoyon stepped closer. Her eyes filled with madness. "Han Nanyuan, I have given so much for you, borne your children, managed everything for you, and loved you so deeply. Yet you heartlessly abandoned me, abandoned Yanga. How could you?" She pointed at his nose, her teeth clenched in fury. "I tell you, a man as heartless and ungrateful as you deserves to die." She turned and said to the officers and soldiers, "It's him, General Han Nanyuan of the Northern Garrison. He bought his official position through bribery and embezzled military funds. The evidence is conclusive." The officers and soldiers stepped forward to arrest Han Nanyuan. Han Nanyuan stood still without moving. He just looked at Su Ruoyon, at the hatred in her eyes, at the madness on her face. Suddenly, he smiled. "Ruoyon," his voice was very soft, "you said you love me, didn't you? All right then." He suddenly reached out and snatched the sword from the soldier beside him. A cold glint flashed. "Ah!" Su Ruoyon's scream pierced the sky. The knife plunged into her chest. Blood gushed out, staining her clothes red. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at Han Nanyuan. You, since you love me." Han Nanyuan's voice was terrifyingly calm. "Then accompany me for a while." He drew his knife. Turning around, he looked at Han Yang, who was so frightened that he had collapsed to the ground. "Yanga." He crouched down and gently patted the child's head. "Father has let you down. In your next life, don't be born into a family like mine." The blade flashed once more. Han Yang's cries abruptly ceased. His small body fell limply to the ground, blood flowing all over the ground. Everyone was stunned. The officers and soldiers reacted, drawing their swords and surrounding him. Han Nanyuan stood up, blood dripping from the tip of his blade. He turned back and glanced at the embroidery shop. Watching Lu Jingming standing by my side and Han Ling shielding me in front, it felt like a picture of a family of three. Han Nanyuan smiled, a smile filled with desolation, a smile filled with despair. "WN Tang." He whispered softly, "I'm sorry, in this lifetime, I owe you too much. Next life, don't meet me again." He raised the knife and held it against his neck. With a forceful slash, blood spurted out. The soldiers braved the rain to collect their bodies. I didn't look back again. Taking Lu Jingming and the children to the backyard to eat hot pot. Soon the sky cleared, and I walked into the courtyard, taking a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity in my heart. From 16 to 33. 17 years, a dream, now awakened. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.